Fire in 1922 destroyed all of this end of the property, and it was later rebuilt. Now, the Hydro Majestic was the brainchild of Mark Foy. Has everybody heard of Mark Foy?
Yes.
Yeah. So Mark Foy's famous Sydney department store, established by our Mark Foy in 1885. Him and his brother Francis. The original Mark Foy's, of course, was in Melbourne. Again, established by Mark Foy Sr., who came out from Ireland in 1860. And then when he passed away in the 1880s, the business passed down to all of the family, but Mark and Francis were the ones that had the control over the decision making. They decided to sell up in Melbourne and re-establish the brand in Sydney. And it was a very successful decision. Hugely successful venture, and that's where our Mark Foy made his money between 1885 and the early 1900s, at which time he cashed in his shares in that business because he wanted to pursue his personal project. He'd been introduced to hydrotherapy on one of his numerous overseas trips, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever. And everywhere he went, he'd always take time to prioritize a visit to the best hydrotherapy facilities. They called it taking the waters. And after a while, he started thinking he would like to replicate one of those facilities back in Australia, because we didn't have anything like that. So this place was actually Australia's first health retreat. Now, to that end, he cashed in his shares. The next big decision was a location. Now, he loved the Blue Mountains, and it's not difficult to see why. His favourite spot was the Megalong Valley. So in terms of a location, the main criteria was where that aspect of the Megalong Valley and a train station came face to face. And of course, this is the only spot that it does. So it was an easy enough decision because accessibility was very important. Yes, the highway was there, but in the early 1900s, there was a dirt highway. There were no cars, so it did become important later. So to acquire the amount of land that he wanted, he had to purchase 3 separate properties. One was the existing Belgravia Hotel. It had been built in 1890. The 2-story house in the distance, Belgravia Hotel. And it's actually the oldest building on site. A gentleman named William Hargraves, another famous Australian name, son of Edward, who was responsible for the start of the gold rush by his discovery of gold near Bathurst in 1850. And then the third property was a small cottage located between the two. It's called Tucker's Cottage. So with acquiring those 3 properties and consolidating them together, he ended up with 1.1 kilometres of land along the edge of the escarpment. So it's a very long, skinny block. But then when you look that way, there's the Great Western Highway. You don't have to go too far in this direction before you start going down this way. So that's why it's constrained. That's why it's such a long, skinny property, and that's why the hotel is the layout as it is. It's not very wide, but it's very kind of long and linear. It's a bit of a labyrinth. It winds its way along the edge of the escarpment. But I think that's been a great part of its appeal over the years. And so yeah, he chose the 4th of July, 1904, to open what he had called the Medlow Bath Hydropathic Establishment. So it was a bit of a mouthful, wasn't it? Yeah, and interestingly, it didn't work as a hydropathic establishment. There weren't enough people interested in hydrotherapy. The trend or the fad had kind of passed by the time the place opened, which would have devastated a lot of people, but Foy was certainly an astute businessman, and he was always capable of coming up with a plan B, which he did. And that's when he repositioned as a luxury tourist resort, renamed it the Hydro Majestic, and successfully marketed it to the people, to the wealthy of Sydney, and that's when it did take off financially and paid for that huge initial investment into this place, because he put every last penny he had into it. And that was how Mark Foy did things. His wife, his older brother, all counseled him against putting all his eggs in one basket, but Foy believed if you were going to do something, you did it 100% and put everything you had, and that was how he lived his life. It's amazing how often it doesn't come up. I mean, it's, you know, the Hydro Majestic.
Yes.
How often people don't ask, what's hydrotherapy, or what was it? What, you know? So hydrotherapy back then had two main components. Most authentic facilities would have had the natural spring water for consumption, as well as, you know, ordinary water for the various showering and bathing. And the well there behind you is evidence that, or the water table. But he wasn't able to do that. A man, but he wasn't able to make water come out of the ground up here. So instead it had to be brought in. Now again, most people in that situation would have gone looking for the closest local source of natural water or spring water. But no, Foy was told that the best natural water in the world was in Germany, and that's where it came from. At great expense, months at sea in whatever containers they used, caused the water to oxidize and gave it a funny taste. But it didn't matter, they convinced the guests that it was good for their health and they drank it. Now the water for the showering and bathing was harvested down the cliffs in reservoirs that were fed by rivulets and streams and the like, so it was kind of a natural water. And those rooms were located up the other end of the property. I'll indicate where as we go through, but they're long since gone. They did have remnants of them in the 50s and 60s, but no longer. Hydrotherapy, as I said, was a passing fad back then. It didn't last here past 1913. Now, it only lasted 2 years as a hydrotherapy centre, and then the hydrotherapy was still available, but it wasn't the prime focus. But I find it interesting that it went out of fashion back then, and today it's back in vogue.
Well, a lot of us have read Julian Leatherdale's book, and we're trying to figure out what's fact and what's fiction.
Yeah, well, that's good luck. Good luck with that one.
Yes. Deep baths,
Yes.
from what I could figure.
Yeah.
So whether they were actually a deep bath, I don't know.
Look, there was a plunge pool. There's a poster in the pavilion which lists a whole range of, you know, hydrotherapy treatments, depending on what your symptoms were, because it was a therapy. It was seen as a legitimate form of therapy, and depending on what you had, you were prescribed a different treatment. Could be hot, cold, needles, steam, mud baths, sun baths. It had everything.
Was this building rebuilt to look the same as before it was burned down?
It was rebuilt, but it wasn't rebuilt to look the same. I'll come to that now. So yeah, it got off and running to a bit of a shaky start. Then the Hydro Majestic kicked in, and it was successful. Then 1922 was the first significant event which halted progress. A fire broke out in the middle of the night and destroyed all of this end of the property. There was about 75 guest rooms in the Belgravia at that stage, and a 2-story picture gallery which was 90 metres in length, housing a collection of artworks that he'd accumulated over many years of his travels around the world. Everything destroyed except 4 paintings which we still have, and I'll point those out. But his initial response to that was to sell up and move on. But fortunately, that didn't happen. His wife had other ideas, and she was strong enough to convince him to stay and rebuild. And that's what he did. He went back and redesigned the new Belgravia, which didn't look anything like the original Belgravia, which was a Federation-style building that he'd added on to. Kind of a general Art Deco theme for the new Belgravia. Yeah, it came in the 20s and 30s. And the castellations on the top, kind of graves had done up the other end of the property. So it kind of tied it in terms of style. It opened until 1938. So that was a period of about 16 years where the hotel had continued to operate, but obviously at reduced capacity. But then again, the economy of the world had changed a lot in that period of time, and the flow-on effects of the Great Depression, etc., affected trade. So it wasn't critical that that it was at reduced capacity. And then, of course, when it reopened fully in 1938, he recognised that change to the world economy, and again, being an astute businessman, looked to broaden the clientele base. And that's when it became a more family-oriented hotel and more affordable to what he called ordinary folk. And I've had a lot of elderly guests come in and recall great childhood memories at the Hydro. It's not really our core market these days, families. It's primarily we're primarily here for couples, but we do have other hotels in the group that are better equipped to deal with families. Somebody asked me before, does a tour take in rooms? We don't have time, but if anybody wants to pursue that, hop back to reception later, and there may be depending on where they're at in terms of cleaning rooms. I know we were almost 100% booked last night, so the housekeeping staff will be busy.
100%.
There's not a huge number.
No, but that's...
But but there's more. It's a diverse commercial mix here with bars and restaurants and cafes and pavilion, live entertainment, functions. We need all of that to supplement the income. There's a lot of hotels involved. The building to my right, the Belgravia. As distinct from the Belgravia Hotel, the Belgravia lobby with accommodation overhead. We'll pop back inside and have a look at it from the inside.
Well, that was the guy. Yeah.
Mel was the son of a theatrical agent, and he had an extensive collection of all manner of things.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Artifacts, marine life, for a number of years.
Yeah. So he actually leased property off the hotel, the building, did he? Or?
No, it was a kind of a partnership. His parents were close friends of Mark and his wife, and that's why he had the opportunity to use a section of the hotel for his exhibits. But they're well known and remembered by a lot of people.
I wonder what happened to his collection.
Well, it just like most things, when the principal moves on, it just kind of it's let go, because usually that was a very personal and individual pursuit. So this is the Belgravia guest lobby, built in 1947. Given to the US Army and used as a military hospital. There was loss of income, obviously. There was a bit of, shall we say, collateral damage caused. And then with that compensation, he was able to fix it up and add a building. So the Belgravia dates back to 47. That's the other bit of the timeline, which we don't get from where we started next door. And it's been the guest lobby since 1947. It's changed a lot in appearance over the years. People have different memories of the space depending on when they would have come here, like yourself, sir. It used to have carpentry floors, it had a reading area, it had a cigar room, it had different access, but generally speaking, structurally it hasn't changed that much. The stair with the fireplace. But like most areas of the Hydro, it's changed. Just for the contrast. Respectful way of bringing the place back to life. For the most part, it's been overwhelmingly well received. Every once in a while, I'm surprised if somebody doesn't like something, and unfortunately, I have to ask them to leave the tour. No. There are lots of mirrors and lots of arches, right throughout. Mark Boy had a great love of both features. The original mirrors in this room when it opened in 1940. Where you change shape. Trick mirrors. But it was just indicative of Boy's just sense of fun. He was always and people often say, especially if they came, especially if they have childhood. But it's true. Some people come through thinking that they're going to recognise instantly, and they're kind of lost trying to find a memory. So yeah. The original iconic dome building that everybody recognises driving past and going past on the train. And yeah, it stood proudly here since World Trade Expo in Chicago in 1900. We saw a building exactly like this, and he decided that that's what he wanted to. So to that end, he had the dome built in the United States, shipped over in Peel train, and reassembled on site. Well, of course you would. How else would you?
Yeah.
How else would you do it? Yeah. Anybody could use local builders. So yeah, very complex and an expensive part of the whole project, and I'm sure it would have resulted in the whole thing running behind schedule and over budget. But then again, that didn't matter. It was a no expense spared approach. Now it hasn't changed that much over the years. Certainly hasn't changed structurally. Hasn't changed that much in appearance. In reference to the dome, that's original LED lighting. The term casino, of course, leads people to believe that this was a gaming area, but it wasn't. The original meaning of that word casino is an entertainment. This is where the entertainment happened. Mark Foy was a party boy. Any excuse for a party, and it was availed of. And lots of interesting parties, and he was an eccentric character, and there were some pretty eccentric people invited along. So it was a great fascination to the local community, the different events. One of the more interesting events throughout the year, I think, was St. Patrick's Day, because of course Mark's father was Irish. St. Patrick's Day was a source of great celebration, and just for fun, he'd have the staff and the guests swap roles for the evening. So I've made this all happen here. The stage was there, right at that entry. That only became an entry in 2014. Even though those external doors had always been there.
It was always
A little bit further up this way. So, yeah. Those external doors had been there from day one, so it was intended to give this room the kind of grand entry that it deserved. Instead of that, it was just these more modest doors on either. Somebody asked me about the alcove areas. Yes, and it had the three original alcove areas here and here and here, and they were a feature of the building, and Mark Foy generally used them to seat the VIP or the dignitary guests. And a lot of well-known people came to the Hydro. Sometimes the alcove areas might be used for the performers if it was a small group, duet or quartet or whatever, but generally they performed on the stage. And we still have the stage. It's been relocated down to the pavilion. Here in 1984, and then on the other side of this alcove is the Belgravia guest lobby. Anyone remember when that was built? 47?
47.
So yeah, then between 1947 and 2014, when it reopened, the access was through this corridor. That's also changed.
People want to open the door and run.
They made the decision that the Winter Garden was going to be the main restaurant. And with the main kitchen a long way that way, they had to find room for a kitchen. And that's where it is. And now, the access through there doesn't work as well because you have kitchen staff.
Yeah.
But it's part of the logistics of this place. It's a challenge to make work. Everyone's tried a different, different combination of different uses in different spaces, and it's still going on.
it's only the ghosts go through there. Or something.
Yeah, they don't have any difficulty at all. Yeah. It's named Gladstone Air.
Oh, God.
Local seats, and obviously Mark Foy liked his work. But people assume that this is a theme, but he'd accumulated all around the world over a period of time. And I read in a newspaper article at the time of that fire that the value of that was regarded as second only to the National Gallery in Sydney back then. Now the hotel was insured for £40,000, which would have adequately covered the building work, but I don't think it would have covered the collection of artworks. Boy, as a like a meeting area, and they even had church services in there, because there was stables at this end of the property, but to the best of my knowledge, and then later the stables, of course, were at that end. But originally, 1904, the stables were this end. And talking about church services, there's a cave down here. They call it Cave House, but in Hargrave's era, it was used for church service. I understand Anglican church services for a number of years, and then when Foy built that, they had it over there. Cave House is still there. It's just underneath one of those rock overhangs down there. So.
Wasn't there a monument somewhere for a lost child or somewhere?
Yeah,
you could see it from.
There was a white cross for a lot of years at Mount York.
Oh, that was
That was for a child of Marcus Clark.
okay.
Another famous Sydney retailer back then. A young child, 3 or 4, fell to his death. Excuse me, off the cliffs, and that white cross was there for a lot of years and quite recognisable from down in the valley. But it, I think it later burned in a bushfire, and they didn't replace it because it's private property, and they were happy for it to be, not there anymore. I think 1984, and that's when the hotel left the ownership of the Foy family. Margaret passed away in 1950, but always owned the hotel. But as the decades rolled past, maintenance costs were increasing and revenue was dropping because more hotels were being built and better range of accommodation. And the Hydro struggled financially through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and eventually in the 80s the Foys had to sell. And the incoming owners did a repositioning, making the hotel more affordable, created the Megalong Cafe, which is a slightly different style of eatery to what you see today. It had plastic tablecloths, red vinyl chairs, bistro carvery style menu.
Cheap.
Affordable.
Cheap.
But it worked to a degree. They wanted to bring more people through the door. Apparently I'm also told that he did want to get a casino license. So that is the main way that it was going to work financially. But fortunately that wasn't granted because I think turning this place into a casino would spoil everything. So the North sold it again in 1996 to a wealthy Malaysian family. They bought it as a 21st birthday present for their daughter.
You do?
What do you give the girl who's got everything?
Yes, Hydro Majestic.
They had it for another 12-year period and tried a few different things. It had a partial makeover, which they had Peppers overseeing. Then it was part of the Mercure, the Accor group, Mercure Hydro. Probably the most recognisable thing they did was paint the exterior from the original traditional white to a pinky salmony colour, which not many people approved of. And then they eventually decided to sell in 2008, and that's when the current owners took it over. It's currently owned by the Escarpment Group. It's a local hotel chain, the owners of which have lived in Lura for the last 20 plus years. So it is locally controlled.
That's good to know.
Lilienfels, both in Katoomba, Parklands in Blackheath, and last year they bought the old Peppers Convent in the Hunter Valley. Another really interesting property. It was a Brigidine convent in Coonamble for well over 100 years, and they took it apart plank by plank and rebuilt it in Pecolman. Everything Oriental and exotic, and this area certainly reflects that. I think it's a style that he would have appreciated. It's bold, it's daring, but the wallpaper trees here is a replica of the original handmade willow tree pattern that was in this room. Going into every aspect of this. Nothing has happened coincidentally. It's all been well planned. Is an interesting space Because again, typical Mark Foy with his architectural feature. We have an alcove here, we have the large arch here with the mirror thing happening on this side, and a bit of a mishmash on the back wall. So it wasn't, wasn't how they did things back then, but it was how Mark Foy did things, and most people seem to like it in a quirky kind of way. Any ideas what it might have been used for? Look up at the two structures overhead. There's the billiard room. This is the male-only domain. Took a lot of years for that to change, but unfortunately it has.
Gallery.
Let's stay down this end for now. We will make our way up shortly. In 2008 they bought it and they closed the doors. It wasn't viable to continue to try and operate a hotel and do a restoration. If you could just...
Yeah.
So yeah, it took almost 6 years to complete. It didn't open until the end of 2014. Now you can imagine anyone that's done any renovations, you never know what you're going to find. But how much more so in a place like this. And then, just fixing up infrastructure. We were anticipating, and it probably cost a little bit more. Process to restore heritage buildings.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost getting too much so. So yeah, while the men tended to gravitate out here, now you had the wives edge to the conversation out here from time to time. The ladies, yeah, I dare say there was the occasional lemonade, watered down with a bit of gin. Further back there. The ladies used to love to sit on these lounges and chat and watch. Now I've always said chat, but a 97-year-old guest corrected me recently and said, "So we didn't chat, we gossiped."
Yes.
And now I've had that from more than one source, so I can only assume there's some truth in it. And maybe that's why it became known as Cat's Alley. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just telling the story. But that nickname took hold and it's been affectionately known as that ever since. So
Cat's Alley.
welcome to Cat's Alley. People often say, well, I'm sure the men gossiped as well.
Never.
Gentlemen doesn't. Men did what men do, solve the world's problems, right?
Yes.
Not very successfully.
I think we're outnumbered.
Can you talk the curtain?
No, that's a completely new, style and theme.
Right, okay.
Again, reinforcing that whole Oriental theme to do. You'll notice there's only one curtain on each window.
Yeah.
That wasn't a budgetary thing. That was just to allow more light. Because this can be a dark space at different times of the day. The afternoon it picks up a lot of lovely sunlight and beautiful space. In 1938 he had these paintings commissioned and painted by an artist named Arnold Zimmerman. So these are the Zimmerman paintings. Hunting through the ages is the theme. Different parts of the world, different continents, different periods of history. But they are originals done in 1935.
I wonder what the ladies thought of it.
Original 1904 US radiators.
Another very good is the windows stay level with the ceiling. It's simply going with the slope of the land. Absolutely, yeah.
Distributed to the local.
Yes,
area.
yeah, it supplied the community, the immediate community of Medlow Bath.
Right.
Then a few years later, the Carrington did something similar. That's why that's stacked, that big chimney stacked there. And then it supplied the local community for several years after that, before it came on the bridge. 1,500 acres here. Now he started the farming down there in the late 1800s, 1897 I understand he bought that land. So that was several years before the hotel opened. So this is a very well planned project. Didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen quickly. But he needed to grow the produce because there wasn't much around. And it was going to be very expensive to bring anything in. So anything that could be produced on site, it was advisable to do so. As well as the fact that it was a nice claim to be able to make, that we make things like that today. And where he really proved his innovation was, as the gentleman pointed out, in getting the food up here. That was a big challenge. It's going to take a long time by road. So that wasn't quite going to work. And that's when he decided to install a flying fox to bring the food up from the valley. So it literally came from the valley to the freshest possible state. And if you see quite a steep ascent out of the valley, and then it came out to that point, and that's where they were able to go around and pick it up with the truck or the carts. That grove of trees to the right of that piece of rock competed for tourists by constructing water. It's the biggest attraction of the Blue Mountains is getting out into the environment, and all of the suburbs had walking tracks. But Hargrave's gardener was a Scotsman and a stonemason, and he constructed a 9-kilometre network of tracks that was open to the public.
Oh, lovely. Is it still?
They're still there,
Okay.
and then Mark Foy doubled that network when he took over. So you could walk all the way down to the Megalong Valley. They zigzag all the way down, even though it's steep in parts, and that's where it's some steps. Some exercise, even if you didn't want to go outside to walk the tracks. It was about a quarter of a mile from the Belgravia room to the dining room, so you had to get some exercise if you wanted to eat. So yeah, breakfast, lunch and dinner. Guess what's located on the other side of the wall to my left? The kitchen. It's still the main kitchen, and it's still where all the prep's done. But a lot of the cooking is done through with trays, and it's part of it.
They don't cook in there.
No, they do some cooking. They go to the kitchen and send out. That's what it's all prepped for you. So yeah. You wouldn't build it like this today. In fact, they didn't build them like this back then. So, yeah. Somebody asked me about carpets we've specially designed and made for this restoration. Different patternings. This particular, they were at the entrance to the house. These carpets haven't been made locally. Everybody assumes that everything is made from England. Brinton's carpets in Kidderminster. They've been doing it for about 250 years. Supply Buckingham Palace, the royal households, etc. So you can just imagine the expense of just carpets alone. There's a lot of floor space, creaky or otherwise. This is not for you folks. Of course, back in 1904 on opening night, this is where the VIP guests were brought. Is it any wonder it didn't last? Nobody was having any fun. So that all changed in 1906, and that was when it was renamed. The ability was sent back overseas with his thanks. And yeah, people have been having fun here ever since. With fireplaces in the original dining room, and of course smoking in the dining areas was all the go back then. So yeah, room back then, black and white photography, etc. So yeah. All right, so a couple more. Bring the external environment indoors. Now down the end, there's the boiler. It had every modern technological innovation of the day at play here because it needed to be self-sufficient. So the boiler house not only generated electricity, but the steam for the steam laundry, had its own refrigeration works, sewage treatment. The water supply was a dam on the other side of the and a telephone exchange linked to the Sydney exchange. Yeah, it's really an interesting and unique property, and it's had a lot of different eras. It started its life as a health retreat, short-lived, luxury tourist resort, family-friendly place, military hospital, very popular with honeymooners post-war. Then in the 50s and 60s, it attracted a different style of clientele, interested in a more discreet, weekend away, where you didn't want to be recognised. Lots of Mr. and Mrs. Smiths in the guest room. And the famous bell that was sounded in the early hours of the morning, reminding guests to get back to their own room before they were seen. It was spirituals are very important. Yeah, all part of the legend. It always attracted romantics. Still does. That's a lovely one, yeah. You can still buy his works at auction. The philosophy of the hotel, source everything regionally, was back then, still is today. It's also a cafe and it's also a gift shop. Big visions that he had was to create a lake down in the Medlow Valley and do sailing. Now that proved beyond him. So instead he established the Sydney Flying Squadron, which is still in Kirribilli today. Yeah, he certainly had a lot of ideas, and he had the nous to follow through on all of them. And I like the name that's been written down very well. Oh, there's still they have a coffee.
We've been so forgetful. I kind of start to forgetful.
Yes, we went to the pavilion. Going to tennis court or anything? But there were